Take a quick pause. Did you know that over 90% of you watching haven't hit the subscribe button yet? If you're enjoying this video, take a second to subscribe and hit the like button. It helps us bring you more gripping stories every day. Also, we'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your city in the comments so we can see how far our stories are reaching. Your support really keeps us going. Now, let's jump back into the video. The sun hung low in the sky as the private plane descended onto a silver stretch of runway carved into the heart of a pristine island. The turquoise sea shimmered beyond a veil of swaying palms. For Ethan and Claire Morgan, it was supposed to be a long overdue escape, a reward for years of hard work at the financial firm where they both worked tirelessly, often at the cost of their time together. But something about this invitation felt strange, even as the sea breeze whispered promises of luxury and indulgence. They had received the invitation a month ago, sealed in a thick black envelope edged with gold. Inside was a card embossed with the emblem of Aurelius Venture Holdings, owned by the enigmatic billionaire Victor Harrow. He was a name whispered in business circles with equal parts awe and fear, brilliant, reclusive, and fiercely private. Neither Ethan nor Claire had ever met him personally. He didn't attend firm events. He didn't give interviews. Yet somehow they had both been invited, along with a select few employees, to spend 4 days on his private island retreat. It's probably some networking thing, Claire had said when the envelope arrived, her green eyes lighting up with curiosity. You know how these people like to test loyalty, build alliances? Ethan had smiled then, pulling her into his arms. Well, if it's a test, we're going to ace it. Together. The island was paradise, on the surface. Their villa overlooked a quiet beach untouched by tourists, with white linen curtains billowing at every open window, and a butler named Miguel, who anticipated their every need. Every evening brought lavish dinners beneath strings of lights, dishes so rich and exotic they seemed unreal. The other guests were from various branches of the company, young, bright, ambitious. But even in that mix, Claire stood out. It didn't take Ethan long to notice the way Victor Harrow's eyes lingered on her. Victor arrived fashionably late to the first dinner, descending the long staircase like a king surveying his court. He was in his mid-50s, tall and broad-shouldered with silver at his temples, and a gaze that felt like it could peel back secrets. His presence silenced the room. He made polite conversation with the other guests, asked strategic questions, laughed when necessary. But when he turned to Claire, something changed. His eyes warmed, his questions deepened. "You have a keen mind," he told her one night, his voice low and calm. "Most people are easy to read. You aren't." Claire had flushed, smiling politely. "I just try to observe. I listen more than I speak." Victor's lips curled slightly. A rare gift. Ethan had said nothing then, brushing it off as harmless praise, but it continued. Small moments, sidelong glances, long conversations that seemed innocent on the surface but felt off in their undercurrent. And Claire, though not flirtatious, didn't shy away from it. She was flattered. He could see it. By the third day, Ethan's unease had crystallized into something colder. Jealousy, yes. But more than that, confusion, doubt. What did Victor want? What was he trying to do? That night, Victor invited Ethan for a private drink on the veranda overlooking the ocean. The sky bled orange and pink as the sun set, and waves whispered secrets against the rocks below. A single bottle of aged whiskey sat between them, untouched. Victor leaned forward, fingers steepled. "You and Claire are impressive. I've seen couples in business before, rarely do both shine." Ethan gave a measured nod. "We push each other. That's how we've always worked." Victor smiled faintly. "And yet, do you ever feel that perhaps one outshines the other?" Ethan stiffened. "We're equals." Victor's gaze didn't waver. "Of course, but sometimes one's light is simply more visible, especially to others." Ethan didn't reply. Then Victor reached into his blazer and slid a black envelope across the table. Ethan stared at it. "A proposal," Victor said softly. "Before you react, hear me out." Inside the envelope was a letter and a check. 7 figures. Ethan's stomach turned. Victor continued, his voice almost gentle. I would like to spend the weekend alone with Claire, here on the island. She will be treated with the utmost respect. No pressure, just conversation, company, a private experience. You, meanwhile, can enjoy the northern side of the island. It's completely untouched. Time to reflect, to rest. Then you return. No obligations, no consequences. Ethan's hand trembled around the envelope. Is this a joke? Victor's face was unreadable. No. Ethan stood up sharply. You think you can buy people? Not people, time. Victor said evenly. I don't force anything. Claire will choose. You'll present it to her, and if she says no, it's forgotten. The money, the offer, all of it disappears. Ethan's mind raced. It was madness. It was insulting. It was... He returned to the villa in a haze, the envelope still clutched in. His hand. Claire was sitting on the edge of the bed, brushing out her hair. She turned, smiled. How was the drink? He said nothing. Her smile faded. Ethan? He handed her the envelope. She read it in silence. When she looked up, her face was pale. This is insane, she whispered. I know. But then she didn't tear it up. She didn't throw it away. Instead, she said, he's offering a lot of money. Ethan stared at her. That's not the point. I know, but what if it's just talk? What if he really just wants company, like he says? You're actually considering it? Claire swallowed hard, her hands trembling. I don't know. We've been struggling, Ethan. You know we have. You work late, I bury myself in deadlines. We haven't talked, really talked, in months. And now here we are being offered something that could change everything. His voice was low. At what cost? I'm not saying yes, she snapped, suddenly defensive. But I'm not pretending I don't feel something either, that I'm not curious. Ethan felt something crack deep inside, a soundless fracture echoing in the silence between them. I need some air, he said, walking out before she could answer. He wandered the beach under a sky crowded with stars, waves licking at his feet, questions screaming in his head. How had it come to this? Had their bond weakened so much that she would even consider something like this? Or had he simply missed the signs, the distance, the silence, the slow drift of two people too exhausted to hold on anymore? He thought about Victor, his control, his calm arrogance. And he thought about Claire, and how different she had seemed this trip. Lighter, bolder, more alive. The next morning he returned to the villa and found her already dressed. She sat on the terrace, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. I told him no, she said before he could speak. He exhaled slowly. But I also told him why I thought about it. Ethan sat across from her. I told him we're falling apart, she said. That I don't know who we are anymore. That sometimes I wonder if we're just going through the motions. Tears welled in her eyes. And maybe I needed someone else to see me. To remember I'm worth seeing. Ethan's voice cracked. You are. God, Claire, you are. They sat in silence for a long time, the waves washing up secrets along the shore. But something had shifted. The island no longer felt like paradise. It felt like a mirror reflecting everything they had refused to face. And somewhere in the shadows of the trees, Victor watched, smiling. The days that followed felt like walking through glass. Ethan and Claire moved around each other with the careful grace of strangers, trying not to break something fragile. Their words were polite, their gestures gentle, but beneath the surface everything boiled. The island, once picturesque and serene, felt stifling now. The quiet was too quiet, the beauty too curated, and Victor's presence too constant. He appeared at meals with casual indifference, never mentioning the proposal again, as if it had simply vanished into the sea air. His eyes lingered on Claire only for a moment now, long enough to remind Ethan of everything that had happened, or nearly happened, or almost did. That was the torment of it. Nothing had technically occurred, yet everything had changed. Claire tried to talk once. It was late after another carefully silent dinner. She found Ethan on the balcony of their villa, sitting in the darkness with a drink untouched beside him. I keep thinking, she said quietly, about how easily I was tempted, how quickly I considered it. Ethan didn't turn to look at her. The ocean beyond glittered under the moonlight. I didn't say yes, she continued, but it scared me how close I came. He finally spoke. What scared you more? That you almost said yes or that I might have let you? She inhaled sharply. That's not fair, isn't it? I wanted us to face this together. I told you the truth. Ethan stood up, his voice low, tight. You told me after you entertained the idea. That's not the same as honesty. That's confession. Claire stepped closer, arms folded. So now I'm the villain? I didn't say that. No, but you want to. And maybe I deserve it. Her voice trembled now. I was flattered. I felt noticed, desired, and I hated that I liked it. But do you even see me anymore, Ethan? Do you even want me, or are we just two employees sharing a mortgage and a calendar? He looked at her then finally, and in her face he saw everything he'd ignored. The weariness, the longing, the years of compromise they had both silently accepted. I do want you, he said, but maybe I forgot how to show it. Maybe I stopped believing you needed to hear it. Claire's eyes filled with tears. I needed to hear it every day. The next morning brought a chill to the air despite the sun. Victor announced a hike through the inner island for anyone interested. Most declined. Ethan and Claire joined, if only to avoid sitting alone in that villa, choking on the space between them. The trail wound through dense jungle, up a slope that offered panoramic views of the ocean. Victor led the way, calm and silent, occasionally pointing out rare orchids or birds with feathers like stained glass. Halfway through the hike, he pulled Claire aside to admire a waterfall, leaving Ethan behind with one of the junior associates. It wasn't the first time Victor had done this, carving out slivers of privacy with Claire under the guise of conversation. Ethan didn't follow. He stood at the edge of the path, fists clenched, watching droplets fall from the leaves like beads of suspicion. He felt foolish, weak, powerless, like a man slowly losing his grip on everything he once believed was secure. When they returned to the trail, Claire avoided his eyes. That night, after dinner, Victor requested a moment alone with Ethan. They sat in the study of the main villa, walls lined with rare books, a globe bar in the corner, and windows open to the crashing waves. I imagine this has been difficult, Victor said, pouring a glass of something amber. Ethan didn't touch it. You could say that. Victor sat down, unbothered. You're a rational man, strategic. That's what makes you good at what you do, but this... He paused, swirling the drink. This is emotional terrain. People underestimate how powerful emotion is in business. It makes the best men unravel. Ethan stared at him. What do you want from her? Victor's smile didn't reach his eyes. What does anyone want? Connection, understanding, control? Sometimes just the thrill of seeing if someone can be moved. You play people like pieces. I present choices, Victor corrected. People move themselves. Ethan stood. You came after my wife. I offered your wife something you weren't. She responded. That's not a judgment. That's a fact. Ethan's voice darkened. You think because you have money and power, you're entitled to interfere in people's lives? Victor didn't flinch. Number, I interfere because I'm curious. Because I can. And because most people don't realize how far they're willing to go until someone like me gives them permission. Ethan stepped closer. If you touch her... Victor raised a hand, cutting him off. Relax. I don't take. I invite. There was silence. Then Victor added, She's still here, Ethan. You both are. That means something. Ethan left the study with his heart hammering in his chest, a storm brewing behind his ribs. The audacity, the manipulation, the truth of it, hidden in the smugness. He hated that part the most, that some of Victor's words had hit too close to home. He returned to the villa, expecting Claire to be asleep. But she was waiting for him, sitting by the window with a suitcase on the bed beside her. I want to go home, she said simply. Ethan didn't answer right away. His throat was dry. Why? Because I'm scared of what this place is doing to us, she whispered. What it's making us see. He sat beside her. I hate that he got in my head, she continued. I hate that I let him, but I hate even more that it took someone else's attention for me to realize how lonely I've been, how far we've drifted. He looked at her, truly looked at her. So we leave. We go home, but we don't pretend nothing happened. We fix it, if you still want to. Claire nodded, her voice small. I do. They packed in silence. At dawn, a boat took them to the mainland. The sky was overcast, the sea restless. Victor didn't come to say goodbye, but he didn't need to. His presence clung to them like humidity. Felt, tasted, impossible to shake. Back in the city, the world moved fast again. Deadlines, meetings, the buzz of traffic, and muted greetings in the office hallways. But something had shifted between Ethan and Claire. They started talking more, truly talking, shared dinners, took walks, held hands again. Still, the island lingered in their memories. Sometimes Ethan would wake in the night and see her staring at the ceiling, lost in thought. Sometimes she would catch him watching her, eyes filled with questions he didn't ask. They never spoke Victor's name again, but the cracks he revealed never fully closed. Weeks passed. Life settled into its old rhythm, but it was different now, like a song played on slightly out-of-tune instruments. Ethan and Claire tried. They tried more than they had in years. They shared coffee again in the morning, sometimes talking, sometimes just being. They worked across the hall from each other at the firm and exchanged knowing glances in meetings. They smiled more, even laughed on occasion. But under that new surface, a thin layer of ice had formed. Transparent, delicate, always threatening to crack. Claire had returned from the island with a quiet sadness she couldn't quite shake. Not guilt, not regret. Something more complicated. A loss of innocence, perhaps, not just about Victor, but about herself. She had seen how quickly someone could pull her in just by paying attention. It was a mirror she had never wanted to look into, and now she couldn't unsee it. Ethan, for his part, was haunted. Not by Claire's near betrayal, but by how close he had come to allowing it. He had considered the offer. There had been a moment, a dark, fleeting moment, where a corner of his mind whispered, what if? What if he let it happen? What if he took the money? What if this was just the price of survival in a world ruled by men like Victor? He hated that thought, hated it enough to bury it. But the stain of it remained. One evening, several weeks after their return, a package arrived at their apartment. It had no return address, just their last name written neatly in block letters. Ethan opened it cautiously. Inside was a small black box, no card, no message. He opened it. Nestled inside was a sleek silver pen, custom made. Claire recognized it instantly. It was the same model Victor had signed a contract with on the island. The weight of it, the design, even the faint initials engraved near the clip. VS beneath the pen was a folded note. It read only 2 words. You chose? Claire stepped back as if the ink itself was poison. Ethan dropped the pen and closed the box. Neither of them spoke for several minutes. The air in the room grew heavy, brittle. I want to throw it away, Claire whispered. Do it, Ethan said. She did. They never spoke of it again. But the message had been received, and the unspoken truth settled deep into their bones. They had been a game to Victor, an experiment. He had tested the limits of their love, their loyalty, their morality. And though they had walked away from him, they had not walked away unscathed. Claire began therapy. She told Ethan it was to make sense of the thoughts that wouldn't settle. He encouraged it. Secretly, he made his own appointments too. He wanted to understand why it had been so easy to doubt her, why his pride had nearly undone everything. Months passed. Their marriage, once fragile, began to feel real again. Not perfect, not healed, but honest. They learned new things about each other in that process. Uncomfortable truths, hidden desires, old wounds that hadn't healed right the first time. They stopped pretending. They started choosing each other again, every day, even when it was hard. But Victor's shadow lingered. At the firm, Ethan began noticing a shift in the company's power structure. A merger was underway. There were whispers in the executive meetings, changes in leadership, large investments coming from unknown sources. And then one day it became clear. Victor Sinclair had bought into the company. He wasn't on the board, not directly, but his firm had invested in the parent company, and his influence was quickly spreading. People started using his name in reverent tones. Meetings began to revolve around strategies he had pioneered. A few new senior advisors bore the Sinclair name tag on their folders. Ethan didn't tell Claire at first. He wasn't sure how, but eventually, over a late dinner at home, he said the words out loud. She put down her fork slowly. So we didn't leave him behind after all. Ethan shook his head. He doesn't need to chase us anymore. Now we work for him. Claire's face darkened. Then maybe it's time we find another firm. But it wasn't that simple. The job market was volatile. Opportunities were few. And leaving meant starting over, again. So they stayed. But they watched their steps now. They read every email twice. They avoided corporate retreats. They learned how to live with the discomfort of a ghost in the system. One night, long after midnight, Ethan found Claire on the balcony again. She was staring at the skyline, arms wrapped around herself. The wind played with her hair and her face was unreadable. "Do you think he's still watching us?" she asked. Ethan leaned on the railing beside her. "I don't think he ever stopped." She didn't speak for a while. Then she said, "I keep thinking about how power really works. How easily someone can make you feel small, or chosen, or disposable." He looked at her, heart aching. "You were never disposable, not to me." "I know," she whispered, but it still shook me. Ethan reached for her hand. She let him take it. "You didn't choose him," he said. "And I didn't sell us out. That has to count for something." "It does," she said, squeezing his hand. "But we're different now. I think we always will be." They stood there together in the quiet, listening to the city breathe. The skyline blinked with life, and somewhere in an office tower high above them, a name they both feared glowed on a frosted door. Victor hadn't won, but he hadn't lost either. He had exposed them. And maybe in doing so, he had given them something no money could buy, a truth they could no longer ignore. Love, when tested, either breaks or deepens. Theirs had done both. And now they had to decide if what was left was enough to keep building on. As the night deepened, Claire rested her head on Ethan's shoulder, and for the first time in a long while, they simply stood together without words, holding the silence like something sacred. Because some battles are not fought in boardrooms or island retreats. They're fought in living rooms, over whispered apologies and quiet forgiveness. And sometimes survival itself is the most defiant act of all.